So, we need to talk. I didn't want to have this conversation, but we're going to have it. Things are just not working. I didn't want to say this, but it's not working out for me now. It's me. It's totally me. It's not you. Okay, it is you. It kind of is you. It's really both of us. I don't know, but it's just not working, and we're going to have to do something different. Now, this is the conversation that almost all of us are having in our minds about our work. According to Gallup, 70% of us are actively disengaged at work. Actively disengaged. A Harvard Business Review survey showed us that 58% of bosses are not trusted. In other words, we're more likely to trust a stranger than our own boss. Now, this makes sense because CareerBuilder.com did some research and found out that 58% of us really don't understand what we're supposed to be doing at work because our bosses have never been trained to be bosses. Well, it gets a little bit worse. Author Lee Branham wrote that 89% of bosses think the reason we're quitting our jobs is money. But if you ask employees, they cite money only 12% of the time. So why are we quitting? In a 10-year, 200,000-person study, the number one reason given, lack of appreciation. And it's costing us big time. In fact, if you looked at the cost of annual turnover, you're going to see that just in America, just in 1 year, it's $191 billion. Globally, $3 trillion. So let me say this again. We don't like what we're doing. We don't trust our bosses, who haven't been trained to lead us and think that all we want is money, when what we really want is meaningful recognition, and it's costing $3 trillion a year. We have to do something different. This is not what we're made for. We're not wired for a job. What we're wired for is a game worth playing. We're wired for an epic journey. I don't want to help us get started on that today. Let's go back in time a little bit. Like all relationships, we need to kind of see what happened. How did we get here? We'll go back to 1940. In 1940, our relationship with work was pretty straightforward. It was our duty. Everybody needed to do their fair share. Now let's skip forward to the 1960s. A lot of things had changed in 20 years. After all, we were going to the moon. When we look at what our relationship was to work then, what we see is more of an obligation to the collective, to the whole, to the corporation. Ma Bell was going to take care of us, right, for our whole life, and we would get the gold watch and retire. Let's move 20 years forward again to the 1980s. This is when Huey Lewis and the News was singing, "I'm taking what they're given because I'm working for a living." Work was no longer about duty. It was not about obligation. It was just about survival. And something very interesting happened in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. A generation was born, digital natives, and they weren't willing to make these bargains anymore. And we have a real issue on our hands with this. They're saying, this is not what we signed up for. This is not calling to me. I don't want a job. I want to do something meaningful. This is what I mean by a game worth playing. We have an opportunity to reinvent our relationship to work. Now, this dawned on me, ironically, a long time ago. The seeds were planted is a better way to say it. It was a woman, Anya was her name. And when I first saw Anya, she was doing something pretty amazing. She was running at full speed, being chased by a pack of armed guards. Not kidding. I stood there frozen, watching this go down. She was running at full speed, and it started to dawn on me that she wasn't really running from them as much as she was running towards something. And they were just struggling to keep up. Now, as Anya proceeded, it was obvious that she meant business because in her hand was a sledgehammer. And when she got where she was going, she tomahawked this sledgehammer through the air at her enemy. The guards were powerless to do anything, and the other stunned captives didn't know what to think. When it hit its mark, a huge explosion signaled that she and her fellow captives were finally free. Now, some of you know what I'm talking about. Back in 1984, during Super Bowl 18, this was Apple Computer's first television commercial. It was epic. It was like nothing we'd ever seen before. And as Simon Sinek says, this was Apple proving their why. Now, I didn't know what Apple computers did. None of us did at the time. But a lot of us believed, apparently, because they changed multiple industries, not as a computer company, but as something else, something that invited us in, something that called to us from Anya's epic journey. In her culminating moment of courage, something went off inside of me. Now, many years later, this percolating around in my head, I had my own experience of escaping the status quo like she did. I was working hard, like many of you, and stuck, maybe like many of you. And in these 80-hour work weeks, my back was going out, I had excruciating pain, I was overweight, I was stressed, not good. Then 2 heroic millennials showed up. These millennials happened to be my 18 and 16-year-old sons. And they said, "Hey, Dad, there's this really cool event, and it would be great if the 3 of us could do it together." And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm kind of busy." And they persisted, and I thought about it. Now, during this time, I had found some measure of solace and respite in a really cool book. It was called Gates of Fire, and it was written by Stephen Pressfield. Now, this is the story of the 300 Spartans and their epic battle to save Western democracy. Kind of a suicide mission, an amazing battle at Thermopylae that went on. We don't know the exact details, but we think it was pretty cool. Well, the book is amazing. I love the book. I've read the book many times. In fact, I've listened to the audio of it over and over. And what I'm sharing this for is because it started to create a spark inside of me that we'll call the Spartan ember or the Spartan spark. And it was glowing and it was getting hotter, but it was stuck. And then my son showed up with a flamethrower, and it burst into flame. The event they wanted to go to was called a Spartan Sprint. And if any of you have heard of a Spartan race, you know how exciting and amazing this can be, / crazy. For those of you who don't know what a Spartan race is, it's a 3-mile, all-terrain, 20-obstacle race. Now, I'm talking about mud and barbed wire, climbing up stuff, climbing down stuff, ropes. You pick up this huge Atlas stone and carry it. Lots of stuff. Okay, there's even a spear throw. Okay, not at each other, but at a target. Okay. I went, but it wasn't so great. My performance was not amazing. It was more like survival. I alternated between massive nausea and cramps in both legs. I failed every single obstacle. Now, to kick a guy when he's down, when you fail an obstacle, there's a 30 burpee penalty. So burpee, that's a jumping jack and a push-up, right? Pretty soon, I was failing the penalties. But I'll tell you what, these 2 millennials stuck with me because there was something they believed in and something that I hoped to believe in that was getting kindled. And 4 hours later, I finished the race. Okay. Interestingly enough, just this past January, we ran this race again. We've run many races since that time, but in January we ran again. And what took 4 hours only took me about 1 hour and 15 minutes. I've successfully completed every single obstacle, and my sons were right there at the fire jump at the end cheering me on. We can change. We can, but it takes an epic story to capture our heart. And right now, in our workplace, we don't have that epic story. Just like Anya, who is breaking free, and just like my own Spartan experience, we have to do something that's, well, kind of heroic. And what I want to do today is to combine these two to let you know what I've been using with my clients, my family, to help us create this game worth playing, a new relationship to our life and to our work. It's got 3 parts, so let's go through those 3 parts together. The first part is we have to find our why. We have to uncover our why. The second part is we have to escape the status quo. Now, by status quo, I mean yours, not compared to anyone else's, but the thing you feel stuck in, okay? And the last step is we have to take heroic action now. So we're going to do this. So lecture over, workshop on. Here we go. Okay, first thing is we need to uncover our why. All right, so eyes closed for a second. Imagine, if you will, you are a warrior, you are a Spartan, and you're standing on the battlefield. Okay, eyes back open. Got it? Okay, you're about to fire your bow and arrow. Question: which direction does the arrow go first? The trick question. It actually goes the exact opposite direction. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, because if we're going to get to our target, we're going to have to put a lot of tension on that bow, and we're going to have to work this thing backwards. So we're going to go backwards right now. I'm going to ask you to remember what we're going to do right now, okay? You're going to have 3 things to remember. I want you to go backwards right now in your life to the time before you were 17 to about 10 years old, right in that window. And I want you to think of, who was your hero? Just intuitively, what comes to your mind? Who was your hero? Someone who was awesome, someone who was inspiring. They could have been real. They could have been imaginary. It could have been in a book. For me, it was Dizzy Gillespie, the famous trumpet player. I heard him play when I was a freshman in high school, and it blew me away. It was so fast, so high, so elegant, so technical, so awesome. Those are some of my words. Got your 3 words? Now let's pull the bow back a little farther, because this has to get all the way to an epic target, not just out there in the world like so-so. Before you were 10, who was your hero? This really matters, because this is before we knew about money. This is before we started doing things in order to get things, right? We didn't have all that external conditioning when we were young. This is right in the center of your heart. This is who you are. Who was it? 10 to maybe 7 or 8 years old. Again, imagined or real, it's not important. It's only important that you wanted to be them. For me, Han Solo. He was cool, he was smart, and he was a risk taker. Now, if you've got 3 characteristics for your hero, 3 characteristics for your second hero, those 6 things, we're going to call those signposts. Those signposts are who you are. It is who you have it in yourself to be. And the question is, if we've pulled that guiding trajectory back on that arrow and we're about to let it loose, what is that trajectory? So let me ask you some questions to start thinking about that trajectory right now. What would it be like if all 6 of those words were true about you right now? Think about a year from now. If you really focus on manifesting all 6 of those words in your life, in your family, in your business, what would that feel like? Now, it's important to imagine this, not just to say, oh, wah, wah, wah. You really have to go there. Believe me, when I was 50 pounds overweight and about to have a heart attack on the Spartan race, I wasn't in this whole, well, I guess I got to go work out before I do this. I just had to take action. I'm asking each and every one of you to take action along this trajectory. Okay, step 2. Step 2 is escape from the status quo. So we have our trajectory. Now it's time to fire the arrow. This is where we met Anya. Remember from the Apple commercial? Anya running with the sledgehammer. Okay, sledgehammer optional, but it is pretty cool. Okay, this is the breakout time. And what you're going to have to do to break out is create what I call an anchor activity. It's something that's incremental. Think about it as something that's unstoppable but slow. What happens if we set goals that are too lofty or too high? Well, they can be motivational, but typically we have a thing called habit suicide. And the goal just melts away. And we start going to the gym or we do whatever we do, but it just falls apart, so we can't do that. What we've got to do is build in an anchor activity, and it's simply this: asking the question every day, how is what I'm doing in alignment with those 6 signposts? Step 3, take heroic action now. Taking heroic action makes me think of General George Patton, who said, a good plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. I want to free you from having to get it right. I didn't get it right. I failed every obstacle. Okay, but the effort was what was important. The consistency is what's important. Don't worry about perfect. Worry about commitment. And believe me, when you're jumping over fire, you're pretty committed. You guys are going to have to run through some fear doors. You're going to have to face some thoughts and some habits that are not serving you. Whether you're a parent or a leader or a business owner or an entrepreneur, we all have to face these things because our relationship to work is costing $3 trillion a year, and our souls and our sanity. There's a better way to live our life. My wife and my clients call me the millennial whisperer. Now, why do I bring millennials into this? Well, because 2 of them really helped me quite a bit. And I think they have the key for all of us. I'm very positive on this group of amazing digital natives, meaning that they're younger than the internet. They're awesome. But sometimes I hear people thinking they're not so great, and I take issue with this, I do. They say they're myopic, and they're lazy, and they're self-centered, and I think that this is just a giant lost in translation moment. It makes me think of what Albert Einstein said, everybody's a genius, but if you measure a fish by how well it climbs a tree, it's going to feel stupid its whole life. Now, let me tell you where the disconnect's coming in here, where this lost in translation moment is coming. Okay, for those of you who are, let's say, 40 and older, think about the games that you played as kids. All the games that we played, even Pong and Pac-Man, we're getting a little digital, but all those games are symbolic. Chess, Penta, Go, checkers, there's no story. You're not even in the action, you're just watching it. And this has been true for all of human history until about 1990. And what happened then? Digital was the zeitgeist, and here we go. 87 million millennials growing up completely different. Their games, like Halo, have novels, multiple novels about every character. You're not watching the action, you're in the action. Right? The soundtrack for the video game is written by the same people who are writing soundtracks for the movies. It's movie-like graphics, total immersion, Ready Player One. If you want to know what's happening when that 18-year-old or 20-year-old shows up to work and they seem unmotivated, they're waiting for the game to load. They're waiting on an epic journey. And you are too. We've made a bargain about work that's not working anymore. And we need to break up with that idea and move to something new. That new thing is a heroic journey. It's an epic tale, and you need to write it. So you're going to take those 6 ideas that we talked about, you're going to write your story. It might be 5 or 6 pages long. It's about the future, what your life is like when all 6 of those things are true. If you're a business owner, man, your team is going to want to know that story because they want to be in a story. If you don't think this whole story thing is true, let me just mention the fact that the movie franchises of DC Comics and Marvel Comics have done what has never been done before in history. $17 billion in revenue. And who are they putting forward as their heroes? A team. We have a collaborative group of people in our millennials and our digital natives. They want to be on a team. They want to do something meaningful. And we have to invite them into this game worth playing. Now, if we don't do that, think about some of the challenges that we face. They're pretty big today. They really are. And it could be game over. What I'm saying is, if we reinvent our relationship to work, if we connect the generations, we're going to find something that we've never seen before. It doesn't have to be the way it is today. But it starts with those micro goals, as Brian Johnson says, those little steps that happen every day, that ruthless measuring of exactly are we in alignment. And where we're not in alignment, we're going to have to take heroic action. And when our teams and our family and our employees and our community see us take that action, they're going to want to take action too. So here it is. We have to uncover our why. We have to escape the status quo, and we have to take heroic action now. Thank you.